Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. President Biden signs 2 more executive orders focused on virus relief and protecting the federal workforce. He also makes the case for how his proposed $1.9 trillion stimulus package would benefit small businesses. The Texas Attorney General is suing the Biden administration over its 100-day pause on deportation. The attorney called the order unlawful and says if unchecked, it could give the Biden administration a gateway to bypass Congress for future immigration reform. Some lawmakers are expressing outrage at the way thousands of National Guardsmen were treated in D.C. After working to safeguard Inauguration Day events, they were told to leave the Capitol area and left to sleep in an unheated parking garage. The new administration has been quick to reverse many of President Trump's policies. We speak to some Trump supporters about which ones they think are most important and what might happen to them under President Biden. And Beijing steps up efforts to build military drones. According to one report, the goal is to spy on and compete with the U.S. President Biden has signed 2 more executive orders. One focuses on providing virus relief by giving Americans easier access to food assistance. The other requires federal contractors to pay their employees a certain amount. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
Today, I'm signing an executive order that directs a whole of government effort to help millions of Americans who are badly hurting. It requires all federal agencies to do what they can do to provide relief to families, small business, and communities.
One of Biden's new executive orders aims to help families hit hard by the virus. It directs the Department of Agriculture to consider taking steps to help these families get more food and nutrition assistance benefits. His second executive order requires federal contractors to increase their minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Another makes sure that federal contractors who are receiving taxpayers' dollars provide their workers with the pay and benefits they deserve. These are places where federal tax dollars are administered, are being made available to build things from ships to staircases.
Biden's $1.9 trillion relief plan would include another round of $1,400 stimulus checks. It would also increase enhanced unemployment benefits to $400 per week from $300. It would also offer more assistance to small businesses.
Our rescue plan will provide flexible grants to help the hardest hit small businesses survive the pandemic, and low-cost capital to help entrepreneurs of all backgrounds create and maintain jobs, plus provide essential goods and services that communities so desperately depend on.
Biden said the $900 billion relief package passed in December was just a down payment and that we need more action, though some Republicans have questioned whether a second, larger relief bill is needed. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
The National Economic Council Director Brian Deese answered questions about the economic relief executive order. He said the changes to food assistance eligibility can be made under the current budget without any additional action from Congress. And the Department of Homeland Security says the Biden administration's 100-day pause on deportation must go into effect today. The Texas Attorney General called the order unlawful and is now suing the Biden administration over it. NTD's Melina Weiskup has that story.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says the 100-day deportation freeze violates a contractual agreement between Texas and the DHS. The freeze would place restrictions on border control agents, and since Texas is a border state, it means they'll face the brunt of it.
So a large number of individuals who have committed crimes, serious crimes, will be released into the community in Texas. A lot of government expenditures will have to be made.
He says he expects the Biden administration will do everything it can to prevent a surge of migrants across the border so that Congress may be more likely to pass a newly proposed bill to fast-track citizenship. But he says this deportation freeze will most likely cause more illegal entry attempts.
Now, it says that they're going to prioritize the removal of people who entered after a specific date, but once that individual is in the United States, there's no real way for ICE to determine when that person entered. They're simply dependent upon the statements of that individual as to when they entered the United States.
The DHS claims the purpose of the deportation freeze is to rebuild fair and effective asylum procedures and to respond to threats to national security, public safety, and border security.
They were things that were actually being prioritized by the Trump administration. So it's a little confusing as to why exactly the Biden administration didn't go back to the old Obama administration guidance. But for some reason, this is actually much, much more restrictive with respect to ICE.
Texas Attorney General called the deportation freeze a blanket halt that, if unchecked, could give the Biden administration a gateway to bypass Congress for future immigration reform. The Attorney General's lawsuit has already gained the support of Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
25,000 members of the National Guard were called to Washington for the inauguration of Joe Biden. After the event, they were told to pack up and move out. But with nowhere to go, thousands of Guardsmen were left stranded around the Capitol. NTD's Christina Kim has those details.
The day after inauguration, thousands of Guardsmen protecting the Capitol complex were told by the U.S. Capitol Police to pack up and move out of the Capitol and nearby congressional buildings. The Guardsmen were told to set up mobile command centers outside or in nearby hotels and were forced to sleep and rest at various points around the Capitol. Politico reports that one group was forced to rest in a parking garage with no internet, just one electrical outlet, and one bathroom for 5,000 members. Capitol Police are under the direct control of congressional leaders, including Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. One Guardsman told Politico they felt betrayed after serving and protecting the Capitol to then be sent away to a parking garage. One Guard member said, upon arriving in D.C., they were packed in like sardines and didn't get tested for the virus. Many Guardsmen said social distancing was impossible, and Politico said more than 100 troops tested positive for the virus. Lawmakers from both sides of the aisle, including Senators Joni Ernst, Kevin McCarthy, and Tammy Duckworth, expressed their outrage, saying our troops deserve to be treated with respect. Democratic Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez echoed the sentiment, offering her office space and snacks. Representative Madison Cawthorn sprung into action and delivered pizza to the soldiers. In response to this, governors from New Hampshire, Florida, Montana, and Texas have ordered the National Guard troops to come back home. Senators Jim Inhofe and Chuck Schumer blamed one uniformed police officer who allegedly issued an order without authority or without going through the chain of command for the situation. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Capitol Police officials deny they instructed the National Guard troops to leave the Capitol building facilities. The acting chief says all Guardsmen and women have been relocated to space within the Capitol complex now. And the Biden-Harris administration issued a statement on the 48th anniversary of the Roe v. Wade decision, reaffirming their position on the matter. NTD's Christina Kim takes a closer look at what they say.
In a stark contrast to the Trump administration, the Biden-Harris administration marked the anniversary of the landmark decision by promising to enshrine Roe into federal law. A statement from the White House read that the president and vice president are committed to codifying Roe v. Wade and appointing judges that respect foundational precedents like Roe. Biden is seen by some to be one of the most abortion-protective presidents in our history. When asked how Biden would deal with the Mexico City policy and the Hyde Amendment to abortion-related policies, Press Secretary Jen Psaki avoided answering the question.
But I will just take the opportunity to remind all of you that he is a devout Catholic and somebody who attends church regularly. He started his day attending church with his family this morning, but I don't have anything more for you on that.
In his campaign, Biden promised to rescind the Mexico City policy just as the Obama-Biden administration did. Abortion-related policies have largely been rescinded and reinstated along party lines. Before leaving office, President Trump issued January 22, 2021 as National Sanctity of Human Life Day, a tradition upheld by pro-life presidents. Trump called Roe v. Wade a constitutionally flawed ruling that resulted in the loss of more than 50 million innocent lives. Trump called every life a gift to the world and said every person is made in the holy image of God. Christina Kim, NTD News.
On his first day in office, President Biden revoked the permit for the controversial Keystone XL pipeline. An expert on energy and the environment explains the likely impact of that move to NTD's Grace Coulter.
The Trump administration revived the Keystone XL pipeline and began construction after a nearly 13-year delay. Now, the new administration has reversed course. President Biden revoked the permit for the pipeline on his first day in office through executive action. This in the name of climate change. But Nick Loris, an economist who focuses on energy, environmental, and regulatory issues, says this decision is not good for the economy or the environment.
It would have created thousands of construction jobs. It would have safely and reliably delivered oil from our neighbor to the north down to Gulf Coast refineries. And it's the best environmental option for transporting oil. And even the Obama administration, when it was looking at the pipeline, said that the project itself would not contribute significantly to climate change. And so,
Loris notes that with or without the pipeline, the oil will be transported, if not by the pipeline, by rail or truck, which he says is more risky. Loris says the cancellation is also a huge loss for investors. Among them are several Indigenous Canadian groups who collectively invested nearly $764 million in the pipeline. Loris says government action like this makes investors wary of backing infrastructure projects.
But it also results in less efficiency. And so we're not only losing out on the economic development, but we're losing out on potentially bringing more efficient resources to the market, which is going to yield better environmental outcomes.
Loris says the key to achieving both economic and environmental progress is investment in new energy sources and rolling back regulations.
If we want the widespread adoption of cleaner energy investment and technologies, we need to make them affordable. And the best way to do that is by really getting the government out of the way and through market forces.
Loris says that not only fossil fuels, but also renewable energy projects face erroneous regulations.
This is kind of a systemic frustration among all energy sources. And the more we can have regulatory efficiency, the more we can have free trade, and the more we can encourage innovation in new technologies.
He says this will benefit not only the U.S., but also the rest of the world in achieving environmental and economic prosperity. Grace Coulter, NTD News, New York.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also does not support the president's move to cancel the pipeline. This due to the impact on Canadian jobs and its energy industry. Trudeau called Biden in November, urging him to rethink the move. And tonight, Trudeau is set to call him again, making Trudeau the first foreign leader to speak with Biden since his inauguration. And another Biden cabinet pick is now Senate confirmed. General Lloyd Austin takes command and authority over the military as the new U.S. Defense Secretary. Austin is a 4-star general and just 4 years retired from military service. The Senate voted 93-2 to confirm the general. He's described himself as a general and a soldier, but says he's prepared to serve now as a citizen. He graduated from the United States Military Academy in New York and served as the 12th Commander of the United States Central Command. Now, General Austin will take over operational and administrative responsibilities over all Department of Defense military service branches. And President Biden is walking back a number of policies set by President Trump. One of them includes our involvement with the WHO. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on what this means and why Trump wanted to leave it in the first place.
Former President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the World Health Organization because he says they failed to make reforms like countering China's oversized influence on it. But President Biden on day one rolled back Trump's order, saying he did it to show global leadership.
Ultimately, our plan is based on unity, which is why I took an action yesterday for the United States to rejoin the World Health Organization.
Trump said in May he would fund other global organizations besides the WHO because reforms hadn't been made. Another problem Trump raised was how the WHO repeated China's propaganda that the CCP virus was not contagious. The WHO Director General also praised China multiple times, saying it set a new standard in controlling outbreaks. But evidence shows that the Chinese Communist Party covered it up. The regime knew how bad the outbreak was. According to a Washington University report on the outbreak, the CCP delayed revealing evidence of human-to-human transmission for about 3 weeks, up to January 20th. Founding director of the Democracy Institute says he's disappointed with Biden's decision and that he should ask the WHO to reform, but he doesn't expect much.
He certainly, if he does ask just for political points here in America, he won't follow through on that. And secondly, the WHO has no interest in reforming itself because it continues to wield the power that it always has. It continues to be funded by the Chinese and others. In fact, will be getting probably more money as a consequence of its failure, because failure is rewarded at the United Nations level.
We reached out to the WHO, but they didn't get back to us in time for broadcast. President Biden's nominee for Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said he believes that the Chinese Communist Party misled the world about the virus and that the WHO needs to be reformed, but it's better done from within than without. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says President Joe Biden's administration took steps in the wrong direction on his first day in office.
Senator Mitch McConnell weighed in on the Paris Climate Agreement, the Keystone XL pipeline, and more.
On the Biden administration's very first day, it took several big steps in the wrong direction.
McConnell speaking for the first time as Senate Minority Leader since the new Congress took over. He says the U.S. was already lowering its carbon emissions outside of the Paris Accord, while other nations like China keep raising theirs, even though they're in the agreement.
Rejoining will just set us up to kill American jobs while our competitors continue to roar on by.
McConnell also criticized the decision to cancel the 1,100-mile oil pipeline from Canada to Nebraska. He said besides thousands of job losses, it will reverse some of the progress towards energy security. McConnell said this was not the day one that American workers deserved. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy suggested Biden isn't putting Americans first.
I was disappointed to see within hours of assuming office, the new administration was more interested in helping illegal immigrants than helping our own citizens.
He's talking about the proposal to give amnesty to illegal immigrants.
And more interested in appeasing the WHO than getting to the bottom of how China released this virus to the world in the first place.
He said just this week, the World Health Organization admitted its own failure to act quickly at the start of the pandemic, and Biden is rewarding that failure by rejoining the agency. McCarthy says the focus needs to be on America and Americans right now, to get businesses open, kids back in school, and vaccines to everyone that wants one. He said that is a unity agenda. He questioned why Democrats are canceling a scheduled work week next week when there are pressing matters like these. A reporter asked McCarthy his view on whether members of Congress should face prosecution for taking part in the riot at the Capitol on January 6th. He agrees they should. When asked whether he believed former President Trump provoked violence at the Capitol, McCarthy said, if you listened to what he said at the rally, he did not.
President Biden's opening approval rates are in, and it looks like he's off to a slow start. His rates come in below both of his predecessors, Trump and Obama. Rasmussen reports first presidential daily tracking poll shows 48% approve of Biden's job performance and 45% disapprove. Going into the details, 36% strongly approve of Biden, but 38% strongly disapprove of his administration. This group is the only national pollster that tracks the presidential approval rating on a daily basis. By comparison, President Trump opened on January 20th, 2017 with a 56% approval rating. And President Obama started on January 20th, 2009 with a 67% approval. And South Carolina-based lawyer Butch Bowers will be the lead attorney for President Trump's Senate impeachment trial. He graduated from Tulane University's law school, has his own law firm, and is associated with the Miller Law Group. Bowers has experience representing Republican governors in ethics trials. Trump's advisor says he is well respected by both Republicans and Democrats. And the Biden administration is already reversing many of Trump's policies in the first 2 days of office. Our reporter in California asked Trump supporters what they think are Trump's most important legacies and what the new administration will do to them.
We interviewed supporters of President Trump in Orange County, California on Inauguration Day. They were gathering to say thank you to President Trump for his 4 years of service. They told us what they think are Trump's most important legacies.
The border patrol, the building the border, helping our veterans. That was immense. That was so good for our veterans.
China was totally stamped down, totally, and they're already coming out. They've already banned a lot of Trump's people from even coming to China.
Taking on the Chinese Communist Party, that has been a really, really big thing, calling China out. And it's about time. I mean, we've always tried to extend a nice hand out to China, I guess with the hope that one day they would be a democracy. But I think it's kind of useless. So at least he called them out.
Some are concerned that the new Biden administration will roll back a lot of Trump's policies. They want President Trump's legacy to remain and the new administration to continue addressing important issues pressing America.
He needed another 4 years to make it solid what he's doing, and I feel like it's going to start to be torn down day by day right from the get-go. We're going to lose so much so fast.
And what he has done in the Middle East, the groundwork that he has put down, I just pray to God Almighty that the current administration as of today doesn't mess things up in the Middle East. I mean, at least he really started pulling things together. Well, I think that one of the problems that we have to worry about is the Chinese money coming into politicians, to our corporations, getting involved with our technology. Those are the things that we really have to be concerned about, and the far-reaching of the Communist Party into other parts of the world.
They're infiltrating the United States, and we don't do something about it. This country ceases to exist the way it should be.
Just 1 day into his presidency, Biden has already reversed many of President Trump's important policies. He rejoined the Paris Climate Accord and the World Health Organization, canceled the Keystone pipeline, and halted construction of the border wall. It remains to be seen whether the new administration will keep any of Trump's policies in place.
Former President Trump makes his first public comments since leaving office. He said that he'll make a comeback in some way, but didn't explain how. Trump told Rob Crilly of the Washington Examiner that he'll do something, but not just yet. He didn't give any details about his plans. According to the Examiner, Trump made the comment while dining at the Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida. Trump made similar remarks about being back in some form on Wednesday morning before leaving for Florida. And 2 days after leaving the White House, former President Trump can now rest up in Florida. But what are his plans for the future? One of his top advisors revealed some potential plans.
Top Trump advisor Jason Miller tells Just the News that former President Trump has a number of goals in the next couple of years. One of his major goals is to win back the Senate and the House for Republicans in the 2022 midterm elections. This is to stop what he calls, quote, the Democratic craziness. The Democratic Party currently holds a majority in both the House and the Senate. Miller also reveals Trump plans to be the nation's leader on voter integrity. He expects Trump to work closely with state legislatures to ensure election integrity. Miller adds that Trump will start after undergoing a transition period first. But because Democrats are in control of both Congress and the White House, Miller does not believe Washington will address the issue of election integrity. Although Trump has not said whether he will run for president again in 2024, he told his supporters before leaving office on Wednesday that, quote, we will be back in some form. He also said in his farewell video on Tuesday that, quote, the movement we started is only just beginning. On the same day, Miller tweeted a picture of the White House with the caption that says, until 2025.
In Oregon, Portland is planning to pay reparations for descendants of slavery. This includes prioritizing minorities and establishing Juneteenth, a national holiday.
Trends may be fleeting, but values are timeless. We now bring you this new clothing brand with classic design and luxurious comfort. It's our way of sharing hope and inspiration from the world of Shenyun. We bring you Shenyun Dancer. Wear it with honor.
Someone has to find the way to build the Great Dome. Completely new, completely original.
Portland established its plans last week to push the U.S. government to pay reparations to descendants of slavery. The Oregon city has no reparation laws for itself, and much of America remains unfavorable to the proposal.
The Portland City Council developed an outline for reparations for Black and Native Americans last week. The proposal calls for Congress to establish Juneteenth as a national holiday on June 19th. This is in addition to creating a national anti-displacement program providing funds for households, businesses, and cultural institutions prioritizing minorities. They also call for an alteration to the 13th Amendment to ban prison labor. While Portland has not yet approved local reparations, a North Carolina city passed its own measures last summer. The resolution apologizes for its role in slavery. However, the city of Asheville has since postponed the vote on how to allocate $1 million in community reparations to Black residents. Further, last November, a majority of the new city council asked the mayor to remove the proposed reparations resolution from the city agenda. A poll conducted by Ipsos in June 2020 showed 20% of Americans support reparations. Texas Democratic Representative Sheila Jackson Lee reintroduced a bill this month to create a commission to study reparations for slavery. According to a Duke University economist, reparations could cost the United States up to $12 trillion, with roughly 5% of the whites in the United States of pre-Civil War ancestry. Reporting by NTD News, Seattle, Washington.
In California, a pastor avoids jail time for not complying with virus guidelines. Instead, he's facing $1 million in fines. NTD's David Lamb hears from those involved outside the courthouse.
Santa Clara County called for the arrest and jail time for Pastor Mike McClure and Pastor Carson Atherley for not enforcing church members to follow COVID guidelines. The attorney representing the pastors, Robert Tyler, said that jail time is possible, but the court is seeking monetary fines rather than jail time. This was after a rally and hearing at the San Jose courthouse yesterday.
So, at this point in time, it does appear to be off the table. I don't think we're going to be looking at these gentlemen in handcuffs anytime soon.
Organizers and supporters of the pastors met before the court hearing.
We can't enforce someone else's, it's not even a law, I shouldn't say, their rules, their mandates. We don't have the authority to enforce it. Specifically masked, it's a medical device.
McClure reopened his church, Calvary Chapel, San Jose, last year. The fines have accumulated to over $1 million.
It's sad to see the state in which our country is, where you have the state fighting against the church or the church against the state. What we need to is remember that what made America great was our trust in God. We were united under this understanding that this is a great nation to be in, and I still believe this is a great nation.
The pastors believe that places of worship help the community's mental health during the pandemic.
When you hear from Pastor McClure talking about the lives that are changed because they're coming together and having the opportunity to meet, and souls that are being saved, and lives that are literally saved from suicide.
And again, this is a battle that's going to be won in prayer, so continue to lift this up throughout the next week. God bless you guys.
The court hearing is next Thursday on January 28th for closing arguments. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another. telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
China has been reporting a rise in virus cases. That's led to some authorities taking extreme virus prevention measures. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on what they are.
Shanghai is imposing lockdowns on two of China's best-known hospitals after they were linked to new CCP virus cases. Outpatient services have been suspended at Fudan University Shanghai Cancer Center and Zhenji Hospital, both of which have been cordoned off along with some surrounding residential communities. China now finds itself on guard against new clusters of CCP virus infections that have been emerging largely in the country's frigid north. Lockdowns have been imposed in parts of Beijing and other cities following outbreaks. Schools are letting out early, and citizens have been told to stay home for next month's Lunar New Year holiday. Now we zoom in on two viral videos circulating in China. They reportedly capture some of authorities' most extreme tactics to slow virus spread. The first video shows what happened when one man from Shijiazhuang, the capital city of Hebei province, went out to buy a cigarette. At the time, his home district had already gone under lockdown. On his way, he was stopped by security. To stop him from leaving, the guards surrounded him and tied him to a tree. One of the guards yelled at him, threatening to beat him to death if he came out again. Chinese authorities have been known to make examples out of people to discourage rule breakers. The incident was captured earlier this week. The video has since gone viral on Chinese social media. Chinese lawyer Lu Yingge responded to the issue, saying more terrifying than the pandemic is the party's surge of control. Another viral video from Heilongjiang province shows a similar case. An elderly man was spotted trying to board a bus on Monday, but he was refused because he couldn't produce the right health code. That's because he doesn't own a smartphone. In China, all citizens face checkpoints where they're made to show health tracking codes. The person's recent virus test results and other health data are displayed when the code is scanned. Blocked by the bus driver, the man lost his temper and used a shovel to smash the bus windows. The outburst left two of them broken. But the incident isn't the first of its kind. Since the pandemic started, many of China's elderly citizens who don't own smart devices have faced similar issues. Chinese netizens sympathize with the man online, urging authorities to provide options for people who don't have smartphones. Some suggested communities give out written documents certifying health status.
The Chinese Communist regime found to have been developing more advanced military drones. And the adversary they have in mind, the United States of America.
Beijing is ramping up its production of military drones, according to a leaked document from China's Ministry of National Defense obtained by the Epoch Times. The goal is to spy on and compete with adversaries like the United States. The 2017 document explained the purpose is to arm China's military defense and make it capable of taking on U.S. weapons. The document said the drones could be used to seize information as well as control and restrict other nations' information. Chinese media reported that China spends 0.5% of its military budget on drones, while the U.S. spends 0.8%. Military drones take up a quarter of China's drone market, while China's commercial drone giant DJI claims over 80% of the global market. The Chinese company has been accused of collecting unnecessary information from users. American officials say the company may send Americans' data to China. DJI denies the claims. Police departments from 22 U.S. states use the Chinese drones to enforce social distancing guidelines. The Trump administration banned DJI from buying American products, citing national security concerns. The move dealt a hard blow to the company, who rely heavily on electronic components made in the U.S. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Coming up, Google threatens to stop its services in Australia because the country asked it to share its revenue with domestic media companies. More on that after the break.
마루 유치원 폐쇄 명령서입니다.
전 폐쇄 명령 받아들일 수 없습니다.
유치원 폐쇄 명령이라.
좀 들어간 건 어떻게 됐어? 도저히 방법이 없대?
정일도 사장님을 대신해서 제가 대신 말씀드리면 안 되겠습니까?
United Airlines might make the CCP virus vaccine mandatory for the company's more than 60,000 employees. United CEO Scott Kirby says he wants to make it mandatory and that other companies should do the same. Kirby told employees he has full confidence in the vaccine, but he also recognizes it's controversial, and getting everyone vaccinated will be a logistical challenge. Airline workers can get the vaccine before the general population because they're considered essential employees. CNBC reports that United is trying to set up vaccine centers at some of its main hubs. And Google is threatening to shut down its search engine in Australia if the Australian government forces it to pay for news. Australia is in the process to pass laws to do just that. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
Google is threatening to block its search engine in Australia if the government proceeds with a new code. It would force Google and Facebook to pay domestic media companies for the right to use their content.
If this version of the code were to become law, it would give us no real choice but to stop making Google search available in Australia.
Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison was quick to respond.
Australia makes our rules for things you can do in Australia. That's done in our parliament, it's done by our government, and that's how things work here in Australia. And people who want to work with that in Australia, you're very welcome. But we don't respond to threats.
Google's threat escalates a battle with publishers like News Corp, which is being closely watched around the world. The search giant says 19 million Australian users would have worse YouTube and search experiences if the new code is enforced. Google doesn't disclose sales from Australia, but search ads make up most of its revenue and profit globally. This week, the United States asked Australia to scrap the proposed laws which have broad political support and suggested Australia should pursue a voluntary code instead. Australia says Google and Facebook hold too much market power in the media industry, and that's a potential threat to democracy. Reporting by Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And is big tech buying influence? 7 tech giants, including Amazon, Google, and Facebook, spent nearly $500 million on lobbying in the past decade. Here's the details.
A Washington Post analysis shows that tech giants have collectively spent nearly $500 million in the past 10 years on lobbying. In 2020, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft spent just over $61 million on lobbying. All those companies, except Microsoft, faced an antitrust probe last year. Democrat Congressman David Cicilline headed the antitrust investigation. He told The Washington Post that part of the massive spending is to beat back regulatory threats. He said, these companies, because they are so large, have tremendous economic power and tremendous political power, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to protect the status quo. The report concluded that Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google each hold monopoly power. It recommends Congress should overhaul laws that have let them become so powerful, beef up existing antitrust regulations, and consider breaking the companies up. The four tech giants oppose the report's recommendations and have defended their practices. Some argue that more regulation would reduce competition, hurt consumers, and stifle innovation.
Up next, in the UK, nurses at a hospital offered an unusual proposition for two critically ill CCP virus patients due to be married in June. And French loyalists memorialized Louis XVI, the king beheaded almost 300 years ago. A historian says the killing of the king was like France assassinating its father. That and more when we return.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritang Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritang Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
Over to Europe. While the UK's daily new CCP virus cases continually drop, over 38,000 patients are still hospitalized. One couple in intensive care decided to take action before their scheduled June wedding. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
Hello and welcome. Nurses at a university hospital offered an unusual proposition for two COVID patients whose lives were hanging in the balance. NTD's Joanna Conway tells us what happened.
They were sort of saying to us, well, do you want to get married in the hospital? This might be your only chance. And
Elizabeth Kerr and Simon O'Brien were rushed to a university hospital in the same ambulance on Saturday. The oxygen levels of both had fallen critically low days after testing positive for COVID-19.
I think initially took her by surprise because it's not something they had spoken about in hospital. So she had a chat to Simon, I had a chat to Simon just to reassure him that it was all okay. And then it took us 4 hours from that moment up until they got married.
They were married at 5:30 p.m. on January the 15th, 3 days after arriving at the hospital. Moments after saying "I do," O'Brien was sedated and spent the night on mechanical ventilation and ICU. His condition improved and the married couple reunited. Joanna Conway, NTD News.
London police say they broke up a COVID rule-breaching wedding with almost 400 guests. The organiser could be fined almost $14,000. On Thursday night, officers found hundreds of people gathering inside a middle school with windows covered up to stop people seeing inside. The school says in a statement that an outside organisation is responsible for renting out its hall, and it had no knowledge of the wedding. Weddings are currently supposed to take place only under exceptional circumstances. As the saying goes, dogs are man's best friend. This furry pup waits for her owner outside a hospital in Turkey for almost a week. NTD's Joanna Conway has more.
Named Bonchuk, her owner of 9 years was hospitalised on January the 14th after a brain embolism. Bonchuk arrived at the hospital shortly after the ambulance and began waiting at the entrance for him.
Every day she comes here around 9 a.m. and waits until the evening. She is waiting to enter inside. When the door opens, she looks inside.
After days, Bonchuk's owner was finally discharged and they shared an emotional reunion.
She's very fond of me and I miss her constantly. Sometimes I call her from the hospital window and she responds by barking back.
One hospital staff said everyone noticed the patiently waiting dog and occasionally fed her. Joanna Conway, NTD News.
A Czech theatre company comes up with an unconventional way to help businesses impacted by COVID-19 restrictions. NTD's Eddie Aitken has more.
The Circus Troupe to the streets of the capital Prague to perform in the shop windows of stores that are shut. The owner of the boutique says it's quite difficult for all the shops.
It's better to have customers here than to buy for them on e-shop because it's a unique pieces.
The Circus Troupe itself is struggling to stay in operation since the government closed theatres last spring, and its performers have to find other work during the lockdown.
How they can offer us their space and how we can support them by our skills, piece of art. And it's a symbolical way how to still keep the life culture alive.
The troupe is taking donations from passers-by and online through their website. Before CCP virus restrictions, over 80% of the revenue came from ticket sales. Eddie Aiken, NTD News.
Takeout is booming in Germany, but with the trend comes more waste. The German government wants to do something about it. NTD's Trevor Piper has more.
Germany plans to make it mandatory for restaurants, bistros and cafes to offer reusable containers for food and drinks by 2023. Germans increasingly made use of takeout even before the pandemic. It resulted in over 300,000 tons of waste from single-use packaging each year.
Consumers should be able to choose whether they want disposable or reusable packaging. I am confident that reusable packaging will then also become popular in this area.
This vegan cafe owner welcomes the new law. They already offer takeout food in jars, which need to be returned.
I just have a great feeling that I'm not producing any disposable waste, and of course, let's admit it, it's also a way of winning back customers. They come back because they want to return their containers.
But she is concerned with the timing. She says restaurants are already suffering under the lockdown restrictions and might not be able to handle the additional financial burden. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
Customs officials find living sheep hidden behind the headlights of a car crossing from Syria into Turkey. Livestock smuggling from Syria to Turkey has been a common practice in the region due to excessive price differences between the two countries. The sheep's mouths and legs were taped to avoid any noise. Military patrols usually spot and send back herds of livestock which have failed to be smuggled into Turkey. Royalists in Paris gathered to mourn King Louis XVI's execution anniversary, with some supporters calling his death an assassination. Our France correspondent David Vivez tells us more.
Almost 230 years after the beheading of Louis XVI, the remembrance of the king's memory still brings mourning in France. Royalists, sympathizers and a descendant of King Charles X laid flowers, gave speeches and prayed in the king's memory.
The commemoration of Louis XVI's death is not only something old and outdated, it is also a form of hope for a certain future. The future of a France coming back out in the daylight that renews itself.
Louis XVI was beheaded by guillotine in Paris on January 21, 1793, after being overthrown by the French Revolutionary Convention. His wife, Queen Marie Antoinette, suffered the same fate. According to historian Marion Sigaud, the deed did not represent the people.
The revolutionaries were a small minority that came to power using deception and lies. Even the assassination of the king was staged. When the king was beheaded, some people celebrated at the execution site, and we found that all these people were getting paid to do it. The killing of King Louis XVI was like killing the father of France. All French were crying at the time.
The impact of his assassination changed French politics forever, with the last remnants of the monarch system later abolished by Emperor Napoleon. Reporting by David Vives, NTD News.
That's all for now. Back to New York.
And soon we'll take you to a village in Russia with a sanctuary for cows too old to milk. See how they while away their days safe from the slaughterhouse. More on that after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
In a tiny Russian village, dairy cows that are too old to milk are going to a picturesque retirement home to live out their twilight years.
Nestled between the snowy hills in the Republic of Tatarstan is Goshala, one of the oldest and largest cow shelters in the country. This is a retirement home for local dairy cows who can no longer be milked or whose owners no longer need them. People in the area tend to hand cows over as they get older and become more difficult to maintain. Many do not want to slaughter their cattle, so they ask the volunteers to shelter them instead.
It's already good that people began to think about how to find a new home for them and not just kill them, not to slaughter, not give to the butcher, but simply to save their life.
Around 100 animals now live here, including some young animals born at the refuge. They live satisfied lives with 3 meals a day and no need to work. The cost of keeping 1 cow per day is slightly more than $2, but it's hard to find the funds. Most of the funds come from donations. Another significant share of income is from the sale of environmentally friendly dairy products.
We produce cream, butter, ghee, fat, and low-fat cottage cheese. Sometimes we have vegetarian cheese, that is, we make cheese without rennet, gurud, paneer. These are milk sweets, condensed milk.
They say here that this is milk from happy cows, and it costs just under $4 per gallon. The products are delivered to the regions through ride-sharing services.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.